Today we're going to talk about if these suckers make a difference at all. Or we'll just talk about why people think they don't. Hey everybody, and welcome back to The Lighter Side. It's Josh. Please keep liking and sharing our videos for us. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that as well. Every little bit helps. And also, yes, that intro was just a ripoff of Bill Nye. So deciding what to talk about each week is tough. There are a lot of stories that we could tackle, but we try to pick whatever we think will do the most good, which is why we've yet to roll out our video about how much Mike Tomlin looks like Omar Epps, and that a couple of memes on Reddit is insufficient fanfare for just how much this resemblance holds up. But this week, even though it seems like we should talk about a lot, we felt like our energies were best put towards one thing: masks. You know, the things that make every trip to the grocery store seem like that awkward moment at a Halloween party when everyone realized we all dressed up like a group of sweatpants wearing out-of-shape ninjas. So I promise to only bore you twice with what has become the cliche of the year. Wearing a mask is not to protect you, it's to protect other people. Every time you step out of your house, you should be thinking of the most susceptible people among us and the most susceptible people in your family. The second time I'll bore you with this is coming up a little bit later, so we've got that to be excited about. Now, on July 9th, NPR's Pian Yang wrote an article explaining that the World Health Organization believes that airborne particles play a pretty low part in the spread of COVID-19, which is why running on a trail without a mask in a rural area is probably not going to spread any disease other than jealousy. How can Trish find 5 days a week to run? She has 3 kids. I don't even think she loves them. I mean, where would she even find the time to love them? Although it must be said that The WHO used the week following that article to kind of pedal back those statements a bit, mostly to make it known that COVID is either airborne but not very, or very airborne but not really. So, who knows? No pun intended. Which is pretty much the exact stance the CDC has been taking for the last couple months. Now, contrary to what an uninformed person might say, that is not an argument against masks. It actually means masks make even more sense than ever. It essentially says that particles do hang in the air, but not for as long as many airborne viruses tend to. This means if you're wearing a mask, sanitizing your hands, and not touching your face, then we truly can limit the spread of the virus. Alright, so this wasn't originally going to be in the video, but we now need to address the CDC-sized elephant in the room, since apparently the counts are no longer going to the CDC for, I don't know, miscounting in the biggest worldwide pandemic we've had in a very, very long time. But, you know, I guess the White House is more capable of doing that. First of all, there's no evidence that the CDC intentionally skewed statistics. I don't have time to get into it now, but I touched on it even back in our other COVID video, that a lot of the things that it is practically a scandal of the ways they're counting are actually relatively normal ways to count diseases, because we would much rather know too much than undercount and be liable for all of the problems that would create. The one thing I can tell you is the CDC has relatively small to no motivation to fudge statistics intentionally, and while they've been far from perfect at handling this case, I would doubt that the White House, who aren't the world's leading experts on pandemics like the CDC are, and who have far more reason to theoretically fudge statistics, I wouldn't say they're exactly more qualified to do this. But I digress. This leads me to the 3 basic times when we need to be wearing a mask. First, when spending time with groups of people indoors, say when you're shopping, working in an office, a factory. 2, when you're face-to-face with somebody who you don't live with. And 3, all the times when you're not in your car, in your home, or in an office alone. Yeah, and I know that one is part of the first 2, but, you know, things sound better in 3s. So, in light of all of this, it's really important to figure out why people won't wear masks. And one of the biggest, loudest ideas you'll hear is that COVID isn't as serious as experts say it is. And I'm sorry, there's just not much more we can say about this. We've done a couple of videos now that touched on COVID, and it just seems like writing on the wall. Yes, COVID isn't Ebola, but it's far from any of the other standard viruses we have seen in a long time. And yes, the reason cases are increasing is because of increased testing. But we are also seeing a decrease in death rates that is also because of this increased testing. Because overall US deaths aren't really dropping. In fact, over the last 120 days, we are averaging about 1,000 COVID-related deaths in the US per day. So while the rate may be dropping, that's not really statistically significant because of the increased testing and because the overall people who are suffering are still continuing to be the same. The second reason you'll hear people declining to wear masks is that forcing someone to wear a mask is suppressing their personal rights and freedoms. And this one is trickier. I, for one, am for the statement that my rights end where another person's rights begin. I don't think we should have laws that infringe on people's ability to live their lives freely in this country. In fact, I would go as far as to say that anyone should have the right to do something that doesn't cause harm or ridicule to somebody else. In fact, I would go even further and say that if there was something we could all do that would increase somebody's personal freedoms and allow more people to live their life freely and safely, that we should probably do that. Even we should maybe make a rule about it or something. All right, ironic twists of logic aside, we have to ask ourselves a simple question about what wearing masks means as far as personal freedoms are concerned. Are mask requirements more like forcing someone to wear a hat in public or forcing someone to obey a speed limit? At first glance, you might say the former. Forcing someone to wear a mask is exactly like forcing them to wear a hat or something else, and really nothing at all like a speed limit. But the truth is, if you believe that, you're kind of missing the purpose of masks. By wearing a mask, a law or a request is causing your choices to protect the rights of others, which is exactly what speed limits do. Speed limits don't exist so that you don't hurt yourself. Speed limits exist so that someone else innocently driving along isn't unfairly susceptible to your recklessness. And yes, sometimes people are hurt and even killed with speed limits, but the hope is that by regulating speed, more lives are saved than otherwise would be. So if you're that determined not to wear a mask because your personal freedoms, then I also hope you refuse to follow traffic laws, Class A drug laws, and TSA policies, because those are all laws that limit our freedom to protect us, but also subsequently allow us to live more freely and travel more freely because of said freedom restrictions. And since I know you were excited, here's the second time I'll bore you with the cliche. So, suppressing your rights is wrong, but by declining to wear a mask, you are effectively infringing on my right to function in society without the concern of being infected or risking my loved ones, or in my literal case, my patients. Wearing a mask isn't about protecting yourself, it's about protecting others. And the third reason why people don't like to wear masks that I'm beginning to hear way too much of is that wearing a mask, especially in the heat of the summer, is uncomfortable. And I'm sorry again, but I don't care how itchy or irritating it may be when a 60-year-old nurse, doctor, postal worker, cashier, delivery person can all wear masks for 8+ hours a day, you really start to lose your justification for a complaint. Toss a piece of cloth over your face before you go into Costco, Karen. It's not that hard. Now, I understand that for a channel dedicated to professing both sides of an argument, this may sound really one-sided, but I'm failing to see sides here. Just a couple of months ago, I did a video on a debate between opening or not opening the economy, and that was a legitimate argument between two groups of well-intentioned people, public safety and health versus stability of the US economy. They both made sense, they both had good points. But this mask conversation sounds and feels different. Every conservative Republican who absolutely bemoaned closing our economy should be celebrating the fact that with masks, a little bit of social distancing, and good hand hygiene, we can completely make the economy function again. And really, isn't that a more realistic political slogan? Make America adequately function again. And I'm not trying to say this is just a conservative issue. Every Democrat, Republican, and independent citizen who's complaining about wearing a mask sounds just like Kevin. A 17-year-old teenager from Sacramento, California, who refuses to pretend to be Blitzen in the family Christmas card because it's embarrassing. It's not about you, Kevin. These moments are more important to your mother than you realize. And for God's sake, if you can't do it for her, at least do it for Blitzen. He never gets any positive press after his terrible parenting in the Rudolph documentary. People can change, Kevin. People and reindeer can change. The reason this video needs made is because, barring a miracle vaccine that half the country would refuse to take anyway, we may be living in a world with masks for a while. With COVID cases increasing in many states, even in the harsh heat of summer, the concern becomes just how long this may last. So if you're telling me that it is incumbent on me to help save lives by wearing a piece of cloth over my nose and my face, then I'm going to say, I'm just kidding. You can talk just fine in these, Karen. Thanks for watching, everybody. Click that little logo to subscribe. Check out our other videos, and we'll see you next time. Remember, we don't want to change what you think, just how we all think.